Meanwhile, U.S. officials are meeting with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy in Berlin today for another round of peace talks. Zelenskyy says Ukraine needs a dignified peace and a guarantee that Russia won't launch more attacks. Over the weekend, he also addressed Russia's latest strikes on Ukraine's electrical supply. Now, the White House is pushing to end the war in Ukraine by Christmas. Foreign correspondent Tom Soufi Burridge is here with the latest. Hi, Tom. What's the latest on these talks?
Yeah, we just heard, Diane, that the latest round of talks between the US delegation, led by President Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff, and the Ukrainians, led by President Zelenskyy, is now over, according to Ukraine's presidential office. And today's talks in Berlin have lasted 2 hours, we're told. Zelenskyy meeting with European leaders later, but there is still, Diane, no sign of a breakthrough in the talks. What we are learning about now are the differences between what the US wants Ukraine to accept and what Ukraine and its European allies are willing to accept. The US recently proposing in the talks, according to Ukrainian and European officials, that Ukraine withdraw from the rest of its eastern Donbass region, something Russia is demanding, with the US saying that land could become a kind of demilitarized zone, with the US offering Ukraine a NATO-like security guarantee. But a senior French official calling the proposal of a demilitarized zone extremely hypothetical. That official saying Ukraine is not willing to give up additional land that the Russian army has not yet occupied. And that French presidential source describing a phone call Tuesday between President Trump and the leaders of France, the UK and Germany as difficult, saying that Europe is first pushing for clarity on how exactly the US would be involved in stopping Russia from re-invading Ukraine for a third time, and adding that only once that is worked out, the so-called security guarantees, could Ukraine potentially then make any concessions on the contentious issue of territory. So key differences, Diane, in the negotiations between the US on one hand and Ukraine and the Europeans on the other. Russia watching it all, of course, content that for now it's not being asked to make concessions and it continues the war. But it is important to note, Diane, finally, that Russia's war is not all going in its favor right now. Ukrainian forces saying they have pushed Russian troops back out of a key city in the northeast of Ukraine, Kupiansk, with Ukraine claiming that about 200 Russian troops there are now cut off and surrounded. Diane?
All right, foreign correspondent Tom Soufi Burridge, thank you.